Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Actually, the ASOS guys have just talked about a technology company that sells fashion. They've talked about product teams. They've talked about culture. I can sit down again. They've had my talk, I think. So let's just start off with a game. So can we everybody stand up for a minute?
Stand up.
Up on your feet.
Wake everybody up.
Let's wake everybody up. That's right. Right, so I want you to stay standing up if you're working in an agile environment or working with people in an agile environment.
You're in waterfall.
Wow, nobody sat down. That's pretty good. Right, so stay.
There are liars in the room. Right?
There are? Wow, I'm preaching to the converted then. So stay standing up if you're in a DevOps environment. Okay. Wow. So stay standing up if you're in or working with a product team who build and support the platform. Oh, wow. Flippin' heck. Right, I was expecting a lot of people to sit down. So stay standing up if you're now doing multiple deployments a month. Oh, wow. Still a lot of people. So multiple deployments a week. Wow. Multiple deployments a day. Wow. Anybody doing more than 10 deployments a day? Yeah. Right, wow. Do you know what, guys? You know, maybe at the break you might want to talk to me and definitely talk to Ian, but there's some people still standing up, and you need to give them a round of applause, and we need to speak to them. Awesome. Right, so that was the sit-down game. I was going to play James and get everybody singing, but I'm not. Plus, one of my bosses is called James, and he might not like it. So I'm going to talk about a story of me, a story of BA Systems, a story of DevOps, and your story. I'm going to start off with me. So I was born in Wales, so I am Welsh. I grew up in Grimsby, don't go there. Lived in Kenya, go there. And I now live in Preston. I've got a master's in aerospace engineering, so I know a lot about engineering. I didn't do as much coding as I would have liked when I left, but I do understand the concepts of thermodynamics, propulsion, and lift, and all that sort of good stuff. I did 20 years at BA Systems, so I've done everything from aircraft maintenance systems, flight simulation. I've been a project manager, a service manager, a business systems manager, a service integration manager. And then I've recently I was the head of DevOps for 3 years, head of product delivery. And now I'm a DevOps consultant with the DevOpsGroup. I have a wife, 3 kids, and a dog. And sorry to Scott, I have 12 puppies. There's no puppy killing going on here, right? And they're just like scrambling now and eating, and it's so messy. It's like having 12 children. Story of BA Systems. So BA Systems, massive organization. It's actually got nearly 90,000 employees across the world. I predominantly worked with the UK division of that, so that was like 40,000. And it's an organization that has a massive history. It's over a century's worth of history here. There's a lot of process, a lot of culture, a lot of things have been smashed together to create this thing called BA Systems. And this thing does amazing stuff. I mean, this is a totally unstable aircraft, but if it wasn't for the computer systems on it, it would fall out of the sky. But its instability creates the agility that the platform needs. The Queen Elizabeth carrier is massive. The F-35 just launched, just seen the vertical takeoff videos from the RAF. It's amazing. And then submarines that just sit there in the dark, in the waters for, however long, years. Just a deterrent. But that's great. That those platforms, the engineering capabilities that went to build those things, the processes, we called it lifecycle management, were the same processes used to deliver software. Something that took 50 years to build and was going to run for 50 to 70 years, we were applying those processes to IT, and guess what? It didn't work. The world's gone through so many organizational or revolutions, and Mick Kirsten from TaskTop presented this at DevOps Enterprise Summit. And he talked about, the different revolutions that we've been through. And, it was the age of steel and heavy engineering when project management was born. Hopefully hopefully there's not many project managers in here. So the whole project management, service management, it all came out of that. And we're in a new era now. We're in the age of software and digital. And, you know, the Facebooks and Amazons and ASOSs now are changing the way we work, the way we deliver stuff. And what's more important than maybe project management, you know, in the future, and these are words from Gene Kim, the author of the Phoenix Project, was that maybe we're heading towards dynamic learning organizations that can respond and adapt, that you actually give people the accountability, the authority to do their jobs. And they're constantly learning based on the environment around them. And, you know, these guys here have transformed the way we think about work. You know, these are technology companies that, you know, manage data, you know, manage media, manage, you know, sales, deliver sales, like ASOS again, technology company that sells fashion. And Gene talks about these high-performing organizations use these techniques that we now call DevOps, that are delivering hundreds, maybe thousands of changes a day whilst preserving world-class stability, reliability, security. It's that balance, that throughput and stability. You know, that's the real key. And they've done that by looking at culture, processes, and practices, all the things that, you know, Ian and Scott talked about. And there's breathtaking performance. And what organizations are realizing that actually by taking IT and business and fusing them together to making them one, and underpinning that with a culture of performance, a culture of sharing, a culture of working together, a culture of collaboration, organizations are achieving amazing things. And that kind of predication, the DevOps and Research Assessment Organization, DORA, have done 5 years worth of surveys on all of this, and they can say, through data, that culture affects IT performance, and IT performance predicts business performance. And we just need to go back to 2011. Actually, I think your slide went to 2011 on the ASOS slide. Those were the companies that were, you know, at the top in terms of value. JP Morgan, HSBC, General Electric, etc. Now you fast forward 6 years, the same time it's taken ASOS to transform, and guess what? There's a different, you know, set of people at the top in terms of value. And the ones highlighted in blue are the ones that are, you know, underpinned by technology. Technology is the business. Jeffrey Snover, so technical fellow at Microsoft, these are his slides. He shared this with the group a couple of weeks ago at DevOps Enterprise Summit. And what kind of the State of DevOps report is saying is actually those organizations that have made that leap are delivering code 46 times more frequently. They're much faster at getting changes out. They're faster at recovering from change, and they have a lower change failure rate. And most of all, they're twice as likely to exceed their profitability, market share, and productivity goals, and we saw that earlier today. And Mark Andreessen, you know, he predicted this so long ago. He said, you know what? Companies in every industry need to assume that a software revolution is coming. Software is eating the world. And you know, you're not meant to be able to read this, and this is a slide from IDC. And basically, you know, you look at all these industries, the software organizations are taking over. They're coming. They're like, you know, they're like a virus, if I was to use a technical term. Because IT is not just IT anymore. It's no longer a cost center, even though lots of companies still see it that way. It's a core part of the business. It's a value center. We've been disrupted. The marketplace has changed. The leaders are now technology companies that do stuff. And so kind of my story in all of this is, you know, once upon a time in BA Systems, if this was the Star Wars reel, if you can imagine that, I'm not that good at PowerPoint. Every day, stability and change was a trade-off. So me and the head of projects would fight all the time. And one day, we started to move to SaaS, software as a service. So ServiceNow, SuccessFactors, Salesforce, all of these things. And we read The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. So who's read that book? That's fairly healthy. That's good. So, you know, I read that going like, there's a different way. There's a new way. And actually, I was running all enterprise services for BA Systems at the time. And me and my boss, the IT director, said, well, why don't we just take a few products, the 4 or 5 that I've just talked about. And we moved to a product-centric delivery model, very similar to what these guys have shared earlier on. And then, because of that, we stabilized IT, and we accelerated the delivery of value. And on the back of that, we became a trusted partner to the business. We moved ourselves from being this back office kind of capability that nobody knew about to working with HR, working with finance, working with IT. And if I benchmark myself against the 2016 DevOps report, and basically they were talking about the difference between low and high performers, and they categorized that against changes, unplanned work, and morale. And in the 3 years that we were running this, we saw a 300 times improvement in our frequency of delivery of change. We saw a 35% reduction in incidents, and the team morale doubled. So, just by changing the way we work, changing the way we thought, changing the way we practiced, changing the way we did kind of lean IT delivery of breaking the work down into smaller batches and delivering it out, we saw phenomenal productivity. And these guys are the product owners that I had who ran the teams, who built and supported the software. And because of that, so numbers are a great thing. We see the stats, we hear them, but what does that mean? So we transformed the cyber business. We changed the way 40,000 employees interacted with IT services through adoption of ServiceNow. And we changed the way the business looked after 40,000 employees through implementation of SuccessFactors and all of the features and stuff that came out of that. But how did we do that? Here's my first superhero reference. So we know the story of Spider-Man. He gets bit. He starts developing powers. He's a bit clumsy. He fails a few times. And then he starts harnessing his power and starts doing amazing things. We have to go through that journey. We have to go through that transformation. So the first thing for me in the how was give the organization time, whether it's 6 years or 3 years in my organization. We have to go through this denial, blame, uncertainty, acceptance, the change curve. We needed the right help, so I sent my whole organization, including my customers, on training to do with value flow quality. Let's get rid of time, cost, and scope. That's great for building a Typhoon aircraft, not great for building software. And then at the time, the DevOps group, so James Smith, James Beckley at the time, were my coaches and the coaches to my product owners. They were our mentors. They were our Yodas. They were the ones who were saying, do you know what? We're heading in the right direction. And to be honest, it's a big reason of why I've joined the organization. I've gone from being Bill in the Phoenix Project to being Eric. I'm not quite getting Eric's dress sense, though. And we need to realize that actually this is hard. And do you know what? Greatness, success, is at the other side of the pain. We have to go through the pain to become great. But what does great look like? That was a really big question. What are we here? What are we here to do? And Lord of the Rings is a really great family favorite for us. And, it's really kind of clear that the Fellowship of Rim have come together because the the vision was to save Middle-earth. Who from? From the Dark Lord Sauron. What was he trying to do? Well, he was trying to take over the whole of Middle-earth. How were we going to stop that? By taking that ring and putting it into the fire of Mount Doom. What is the kind of objective here, or the KPI? That ring in the fire of Mount Doom, fully kind of dissolved before Lord Sauron takes on Middle-earth. It was really clear what the guys had to do, and they had, they didn't have lots of project plans and meetings and all that kind of stuff, but they were empowered to go and save the planet. And they had this kind of concept of, Jim Collins talks about the Hedgehog Concept, which is do what you're great at, do what you're passionate about, best at, and what drives your economic indicators. We need to get the right alignment and autonomy together. So if you just say, do you know what, here's what we want you to do, or this is the goal of the organization, but I'm going to tell you how to do it, you're just in kind of confusion land, or in tyranny land. You need to get people into the harmony status. And align your vision, mission, outcomes, objectives, and key results so that everybody knows what they're doing. And we all know the story of the guy sweeping the floor at NASA saying that he's sending people to the moon. Bring your organization along on that journey. And to do that, you need really strong leadership. Really, there's a different type of leader needed to work in this way. Not the old command and control style. You want somebody who's got a vision, a passion, a bigger, I'm not going to sit here and cry freedom on the floor, but that kind of thing, that I believe in something bigger than myself. And Jim Collins, again, in his book Good to Great, which is a fascinating book, he talks about this kind of concept of having, I'm going to try this now, an effective leader, which is somebody that can get people behind a vision and behind a mission and all that kind of stuff. But also, what he found was that there's this combination of humility and professional will that's also needed. What he says is that the leaders that beat the market by 15 times or more out of the study that he did over 40 years, which influenced people like Jeff Bezos later on down the line, are humble. They can say, I don't know. They can say, I've failed. They can say, do you know what? You did the work, you take the praise. They can say, do you know what? When things fail, I'll take the blame. They have this humility about them. And they have this will. And it's not this will to say, I'm going to get my next bonus, or I'm going to get my next pay rise, or my next promotion, or whatever. They have something bigger about them. They're trying to change the world. They're trying to leave a dent in the universe. And you think about Bezos, and you think about Musk, and they want to colonize space. They've got a much bigger mission in life than, selling stuff. And the State of DevOps report in 2017 also talked about leaders having vision, stimulating their organizations intellectually, providing that inspirational communication to get people behind a vision. So there's all this difference between motivation, which is, if you do this, you'll get this, to inspiration, which is, follow me. And at the same time, they have this servant leadership of being really supportive of their organization, of the people in their teams, but also recognizing, where good work's been done. And that's really super important. And those leaders create this, environment where there's high cooperation, messengers are trained, risks are shared, bridges are encouraged, failure leads to inquiry, and novelty is implemented. And this is a model that kind of Western built. It's all to do with psychological safety and things like that. And it talks about, pathological, bureaucratic, and generative cultures. The right leaders will create an environment that allows this to happen. And if this happens, you end up with high-performance teams, high-performance organizations. But how do what does a team look like? And I'm sure you've all got different types of teams. And I like the Avengers story, the Assemble story. You bring all of these superheroes together, and they're proper dysfunctional. They don't know what they're doing. They're falling over each other. They've got, issues with each other. But eventually, they go through that kind of forming, storming, norming, performing kind of cycle, and they save the world. And, there's a big difference to the environment that team needs. And if you go back to kind of 1911 and Frederick Taylor, who kind of helped Ford build the first production lines, he basically said, man has been first in the past, the system must be first in the future. And that's where we started, where silos started appearing, where the car would move through the people rather than the people move to the car. And that was great, and that kind of transformed the way we delivered products that were complicated but the same, doing the same job over and over and over again. But a few years later, so 48 years later, kind of Peter Drucker turns up, and his work's flipping amazing. And he basically turns around and said, no, it's not so much about the manual work, it's the knowledge workers. It's their productivity that's more important. And there's a really great book by Lister called Peopleware, which is all about the environment software developers need, because it's knowledge work. We need our time protected. We don't want to be interrupted. It takes 23 minutes to get to deep thought. Then the moment there's a text pop-up, you're out of it, and you have to go back into it again. And protecting knowledge workers is so important, and a big part of that is psychological safety. And again, Mick Kirsten in his talk at DevOps Enterprise Summit talks about the difference between project work where people are brought to the work. So that's the very Tayloristic thing where whatever the project is, you'd bring the right people in. You're not building relationship there. You're not building that knowledge. You're not building that learning. And then he says, actually, do you know what? We need to move people into product teams. And then the work is brought to the people. Keep the team stable. There's enough change going on in the world right now. There's enough chaos going on. There's so much complexity that actually the only people who can really deal with all of that is a stable team that have learned how to work, learn how to behave, learn how to trust each other, create that, those not only working relationship, but off-work relationships like the shipbuilding stuff that we talked about. And you know, bringing the work to the people is so important in terms of being able. These guys can estimate better now because they've done it before. They know the complexities, the intricacies of the system. They know their customers. They know the business. And I love this quote by Chris O'Malley, who's the CEO of CompuWare, who basically says, "Do you know what? What IT do isn't that important. You know, I don't really care how fast you go. I don't really care how many deployments you've done, all that kind of stuff. What I care about are the ideas that get to my customers." And he put this thing about Lennon and McCartney that says, bring your ideas and bring your engineers and smash them together. Bring your product managers, product owners, bring the people who come up with the great ideas and work with the business, work with the customers, and your engineering capability together. And then you'll see ideas delivered to the point of value faster. And this is what I did. So in BA Systems, I had teams with product owners. So they were accountable for value, for build and operate. So you know, if the system went down at 3 o'clock in the morning, they'd be up. If they were delivering a release, they'd be accountable. And if they were coming up with ideas, it was on their head. We had the technical leads accountable for quality. We had the product delivery leads accountable for flow. So we broke the whole time, cost, scope thing. We started working on value, flow, quality. And then we had the analysts, the engineers, and the administrators. We didn't differentiate in terms of silos. There was no devs, no tests, whatever. And you know, if there was an issue in the middle of the night, the devs would wake up and they'd fix it. We had our ops people building new features. It was a really interesting time and quite a big change for the individuals. And we gave them the right tools. So Captain America has a shield, a bit of a daft tool, really. Thor has his hammer. Lara Croft has bow and arrow, but some people like to think she's got the guns. Ronaldo's got a football. Now, who's going to give Ronaldo a paintbrush or a chisel or a hammer? No, you're going to give him his football. I know you need some standards in terms of some core capabilities that the organization should need, but the team should develop their own tooling as well. Different products might need different test tools, different release tools. My product teams had different tools. And I believe the tools accelerate or accentuate or amplify the characteristics of the people and the team. So don't weigh them down with tools that they just can't use or aren't good for what they need to do. And give them the right environment. So Superman in Krypton is pretty useless. He's just a normal guy. He comes to planet Earth, he's exposed to our sun, and he's invincible and can fly and do all that sort of stuff. Well, let's create that right environment. And we're really heavy believers of the CALMS model, automation. So take the stuff that's repetitive, take the stuff that is waste, take the stuff that can be done over and over again, automate it. Break your work down into smaller chunks. Create that thing that says, I've delivered benefit today, not I'm going to deliver benefit in 9 months, 12 months, whatever. I've delivered value today by breaking the work down, removing waste, and delivering the highest value. Measure the right things, not the vanity metrics, the actionable metrics. What can you use to improve? And share. Share in the teams, share across the teams, share across the organization, share with the customers. Build that kind of foundation of culture, and this is what we believe is the makeup of a DevOps environment. And once you've got that environment, you need the practices. It's all well and good kind of getting into the fluffy stuff of we've got to automate something, and we've got to measure some stuff. But I really like the Empire Strikes Back scene where Yoda is training Luke Skywalker, and he's giving him lots of snippets there about it's not the size of the ship that counts. He's basically having to unlearn stuff and relearn stuff, and he's having to repeat a lot of the things. And I'm not sure what the handstand thing was all about, and trying to lift the ship and Yoda and R2-D2 at the same time. And then there was the time when he had to go into the tree and face his biggest fears. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to look at what's the only thing that's holding us back most of the time is fear. And we've got to overcome that fear. We've got to create a safe environment where we can overcome that fear. And the things that kind of really helped us with our practices and our relearning of what we need to think about was we need to, and this is Gene Kim's 3 ways in the back of the Phoenix project. We had to have total systems thinking. We had to go from the idea to the delivery of that idea so that it delivers value. We amplified the feedback loop so that we, received feedback. Once that idea was in production, once that idea was in the hands of consumers, what did they think about it? And shortening that as much as we can. We had 9-month delivery times, and we really shortened that down into weeks. And then within all of that, where's that experimentation and learning? So these are 3 principles we kind of really threw ourselves into. And we absolutely, kind of fell in love with this to a level, the Agile Manifesto, because our world was very much about processes, documentation, contracts, plans, all of that sort of stuff. Most of our work was outsourced. And, the stuff that was there to build aircraft was all around this sort of stuff. When we started valuing this, we saw our world change. We started building those individuals and interactions, valuing them, delivering working software, not just a document or not just a set of test scripts. We brought the customers so close into this that they got really annoyed with us, saying they couldn't do their day jobs. And we were more bothered about how we responded to change than following a plan. If we always followed the plan, you're developing that plan at a point where you know least about what you're going to do. So you need to be able to learn a little bit, pivot, learn a bit more, pivot, and that's how we delivered change. And we built this environment where basically we'd have clarity of all the work. What is the work? Whether it's user stories or performance stories or incidents and bugs, and that all came into the backlog. We then had, full visibility of all the work. What is the work? What stage is it in? And in the doing stages, we'd have WIP limits. We'd kind of say, let's slow the work down in some ways. Because, there was this perception by doing 100 things, you were productive. Well, actually, you were getting very little done. So what are the 5 things this sprint that we need to do? What are the 6 things that we need to do and get done and get delivered? And how do we bring automation into that? How do we bring all the people into that, including security and development and coaches and whoever else? We built in retrospectives and demos, and then we had all the kind of practices and ceremonies that kind of really enforced the culture, that really brought the organization together. And we also had platform teams, and we had kind of product teams as well. And we had to create this environment, that really shaped it really nicely for an environment where people didn't have to be afraid, because they started trusting each other. They could start saying, do you know what, why are we doing this? Or I really don't know how to do this. Or, this feature that I've been sat on for 6 months, will somebody help me? We created an environment, and this is Gandalf, by the way, facing Balrog, where he says, you shall not pass. I was going to say that in a loud voice, but I won't. It's creating an environment where you can confront the brutal facts. And again, Jim Collins is one of these guys who says, you need to create that environment where those brutal facts can come out. You can face the elephant in the room, and you're safe to do so. And bringing all of that together and putting the customer at the center. And I really, so this is one of my articles on LinkedIn. It's probably my favorite article because I got to watch just about every clip of Iron Man there possibly is. There's 42 versions of that suit, right? So the customer is Tony Stark, and all the technology and all the capability is built all around Tony Stark. And he's got so many different versions of different capabilities and different technologies, but eventually you get to the point where this suit here has got connectivity to the internet, you've got social media, you've got telephone signal until he gets into space and he gets cut off from Pepper. You've got kind of the whole breathability, the whole thing about connecting to your skin. It's monitoring the environment. It's, there's a level of AI in there. Jarvis is talking away. There's a bit of machine learning. And basically, this whole suit is designed around Tony Stark and what he's trying to achieve. And a big part of all of this for me is about being customer obsessed. So, back to the Lennon and McCartney, back to the kind of focusing on the customer, focusing on what they want. And Jeff Bezos said that we've got, beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied customers. Be obsessed with them. But then put the engineers at the front of the organization. Get the organization behind the engineer. because they're the ones who are going to be delivering the fashion or the media or the holidays or whatever. They're no longer the back office. They need to be the front office. And the rest of the organization, whether it's lawyers or managers or media people or whatever, need to get behind the engineers and make their lives easier. And all of this just means there's a new way of working. We've been disrupted. There's a new way of working. And, we've already heard a talk today, and I'm sure there's plenty more, where that new way of working is making a big impact. So finally, I want to just talk about your story. And I love this book. If you've not read this, it's worth reading. So James Kerr, a book called Legacy. And they talk about, it's about the All Blacks, the rugby team. And there's a big part of their culture, which is they take they pick up their jersey and they need to leave it in a better place. That's my job here. This is my jersey, and this is the jersey I need to leave in a better place. So there's a question for you guys here. Whose jersey are you wearing right now, and how are you going to make sure you're going to leave that in a better place? Patty McCord wrote this book called Powerful. It's all about the Netflix kind of story and how they manage people. And she has this one line that says, people have power, don't take it away. A lot of what we do is like, it's the whole Steve Jobs thing that says, why do you hire intelligent people and then tell them what to do? Delegate authority, delegate accountability, and then see what happens. And build the kind of models and the frameworks that builds learning into the organization. I talked about dynamic learning organizations before. Whether it's kind of, you're building learning into your backlogs. You've got you're updating your product backlogs. You're doing your retrospectives, the demos, the stand-ups. Build that learning environment into the organization. And for me, I do a lot of reading. So I read a lot of articles. I've wrote a number of articles. So, if you feel free, connect up with me. There's lots of stuff on the DevOpsGroup website as well. But whatever your kind of interest is, go and find out more about that. The world is changing so fast right now. And there's so many books. I put all my books onto Goodreads, and there's a short link which we'll send out via Twitter later on. I didn't realize I read 59 books in the last 3 years, which is, I'm not a big reader. Before that, I wasn't a big reader. Some of them are the Ladybird books of like the wife and the husband and stuff like that. So, they're good fun. This is not a business book, Ready Player One. It's just one of my favorite books. But the rest of them really have influenced my thinking. And it's really interesting. There's a guy called Jamel Qureshi, who's a performance coach who works with lots of sports teams. And he basically says, you think, you feel, you act. Change the patterns in your mind, let them connect with you emotionally, and then do something with it. And unfortunately, there's all the statistics. There's a 70-20-10 rule where 70% of what you learn is by doing, 20% through other people, and 10% through formal courses. And most of you might go away from here and this whole conference and forget a lot of what you've learned. So one of the things I've recently heard is if you go away and do something with what you've learned at a conference, or revisit it, you're 150% more likely to do something with it, to make an impact. I tend to, when I go to conferences, when I go to talks, I tend to write lots of notes. Not only during it, but also kind of afterwards. I go revisit those notes, write them up on Confluence, and share them and teach. The best way for me to learn is to teach, to share. We have then there's the courses in terms of developing yourself. So we have an academy. It focuses on kind of Agile training and DevOps training. There's certifications in Agile and DevOps, and then there's all the technical training, etc. So invest in yourself. Go to places where you're building and learning. Other courses, I'm sure, are available. And go find your mentors. Now, these were really important for me. Who were the people who were standing alongside you on that journey, that making sure that you're heading in the right way, that when you fall over, there's a hand that's kind of picking you up again and saying, do you know what? You're doing all right here. Keep going. And basically, and this is Jeffrey Snover again in his talk a few weeks ago, this transition needs new heroes. This is all about us leaving a legacy. It's about you individually leaving a legacy. It's about, not just the, leaving the jersey in a better place, but there's an element of leaving the planet in a better place. What are you doing to leave this planet in a better place? Go make a dent in the universe. Leave your legacy. So the 3 things to take away, I'm now a consultant, so everything's in 3 things. So first of all, I'm going to show hands. So who believes that the world's been disrupted? Hands up. That's good. Who believes there's a new way of working? Awesome. And who wants to leave a legacy? Excellent. Not everybody, though. That's all right. Disruptions happened. There's a new way of working, and it's up to us to leave our legacy as organizations, as people, as teams. And I'm going to finish off with this, probably my favorite slide. Unleash your superheroes. And the reason that's in the plural is not just about yourself. Everyone's a leader. Everyone influences other people, whether it's your children, whether it's your spouse, whether it's the team that you're working in, whether it's your football club or whatever. Go and unleash superheroes. Create the environment. Change yourself. Change your leadership style. Change your ability to influence, because we all have that ability to influence others, and help create a planet of superheroes. That's me.
Thank you. Thanks, Raj. Okay, guys, so obviously we've got a 20-minute coffee break now. Head downstairs. Now, you will notice that in the schedule, some idiot didn't really allow time for people to change rooms in between the talks. So I would ask you that you make sure that you know what talk you want to go to, know the next talk you want to go to. We'll make the speakers try and wrap up a couple of minutes early. Get to the room as quickly as you can. Don't sit on the end of the row and make everybody else have to shuffle past you. Sit in the middle, particularly if you're in this room, because it's only going to have a third of the number of people. Please make sure that you sit towards the front so the speakers can have a tight audience. And don't forget, there are toilets upstairs and toilets downstairs, and that person from Swindon still hasn't collected their bus pass. So, all right, let's get going.